Hello.
Hello.
And welcome to Record Sports Hotline Live on a pretty miserable Tuesday night outside, isn't it? The weather
Rotten.
is
It's blowing
terrible.
a gale
Aye.
and it's manky.
It's like a hurricane outside. And it's like a hurricane, Keith, in Scottish football.
Oh wow, you thought this one through.
Listen, I should work for a newspaper or something. We come on here tonight, sort of breaking news in the last hour or so.
Yeah, a lot happening tonight actually. Quite a bit happening.
The officials involved in the Premier Sports Cup final at the weekend, Alan Muir, who was on VAR, Frank O'Connor, who's
deputy,
yep.
his assistant.
They've been binned this coming weekend. They've been stood down.
They're not getting any Premier League matches.
Right, got you.
The rest of the cup final officiating team are all on duty again in the Premier League, the Premiership this weekend. But I think it's pretty noticeable that Alan Muir and Frank O'Connor have been left out. I think I rather suspect the SFA are happy for word to come out that is the course of action that has been adopted. I think it's an admission by Willie Collum, who's obviously made that decision, that the pair of them managed to bungle a big decision at 3-3 in extra time of one of the most dramatic cup finals we've all seen in a long time. So Patrick Stewart, is obviously the new Rangers CEO, has written to the SFA to ask the question, ask for an explanation, a clarification. I think by Willie Collum making this decision, they're getting clarification of sorts, and now we'll now wait and see. I think Patrick Stewart that's another thing that's happened today. Obviously, he's just got his feet under the desk at Ibrox, the new chief executive, and he's spoken for the first time as well. Mm-hmm. And as part of that, he said that he hasn't heard back. He says he'll be interested to see what the SFA have to say. But I think the very fact that these two have been omitted from the weekend top flight card would probably, you could have a good guess what Willie Collum's going to say.
Speaks volumes.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And, this one, we said last night, it's not going to go away anytime soon. There's obviously been a bit of an inquest on the 6th floor at Hampden, and I think it's pretty clear what the judgment is.
We've had a really strong response to the story on Record Sports social media channels. Archie here, it comes back to the point that it should be like rugby. Everyone gets to listen to what has been said between the ref and VAR. We said that last night, didn't we? That would be...
In an ideal world, yeah. But you know what? We don't have that in Scotland, but they don't have it anywhere else either.
Aye.
So that's going to have to be implemented across the board. And we'll probably still be late to the party because it'll probably cost too much money for us.
Michael Jones says, will Rangers just be getting to handpick the refs from now on?
Well, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I've spoken out previously. I really didn't like how Willie Collum was picked out for special treatment from Rangers. There was a subtext to everything that they said and did. The amount of statements that came out, I thought that was Rangers behaving in a less than proper manner, mm-hmm. and I think they very deliberately, they acted very deliberately with it. So I hate to see that, and I wouldn't like to think. But and I'd put it this way: I don't think there's any complaint about John Beaton on this one. It's just VAR. It's what will VAR doing. I think it's a legitimate question.
That's the thing that we'd said in last night's show. The officials actually had a pretty good game. It's that one big decision that's...
Do you know I'm going to throw another one at you, though?
Uh-huh.
Because this one interests me. And again, I said to Des Roach when he was on the show the other night, I thought the officials had a great game there. Mm-hmm. They've got all the big decisions right, managed the game really well, no red cards when there could have been. So I thought it was a big tick in the box for John Beaton. Then we discussed Des's assertion that should have been a penalty kick, and when you look at it back, I don't know why I thought at the time he was outside the box, because his foot clearly plants on the line. So that's a big decision. John Beaton can't be blamed for it. But there is another real big moment in the match. And because there was so much happening in amidst all the chaos, you kind of forget those moments. But I remember saying to Des, the incident when Kuhn brings down Diamondi in the Celtic box, and it comes a split second after Balogun is late on Cameron Carter-Vickers. And actually, it's the correct decision because it is a foul by Balogun and Cameron Carter-Vickers. But I actually mistakenly said to Des that I thought that John Beaton had blown for that foul before Kuhn and Diamondi came together.
I thought the same as well. I thought that.
But that's not the case.
It's not the case, is it?
No. So you're kind of looking at that and then thinking, wait a second here. If he didn't blow for the foul, he's kind of given it retrospectively.
Mm-hmm. Aye.
Because he doesn't want it to be a Rangers pit. I don't know. You need to be inside John Beaton's mind there, but he didn't blow for the foul.
It's like again.
But he's right.
Aye. Again, I'm not ascribing this to John Beaton or whatever. I don't know what he's thinking, but it felt like from the outside, it was like he had a good excuse not to give a penalty. It's like that foul. You know what I mean? And
so there's a lot of this, isn't there? And there's been a lot of penalty to Rangers chat over the last while, and Rangers did get more than their fair share of penalty kicks over that certainly last couple of seasons. Tavernier's numbers have rocketed on the back of it.
Aye, true.
But you can imagine why, if you wanted to paint a picture of they're all out to get us, then Rangers could do that just now on the back of these sort of moments. I don't think it would be particularly healthy for them if they did. It wouldn't be healthy for the Scottish game in general. Mm-hmm. And you hope that they don't go down that road. But certainly where they feel justified to ask a question, they should do it.
A couple more comments. Ray says there will be no official left to referee the game if this is the reason for axing them. And Ron says, just because Rangers are complaining, what a joke. If it been any other team, there would be nothing done. Well, I mean, to me, it feels pretty unfair on the two guys. I get they got a big decision wrong, but as kind of...
But it's a fundamental one.
I know, I get it. But as Ron says, are we just going to do it every week then?
Well, I think when our officials are being selected by Willie Collum, for especially for the big games, the biggest games of the season, there's an onus on them to do their job.
Aye,
and clearly this has malfunctioned. VAR, the whole purpose of it is malfunctioned with the Cerny incident. So if Willie Collum doesn't sort of downgrade them for a weekend, then what is he doing? He has to make it clear that, guys, that's not acceptable. That's a massive decision, a potentially pivotal moment in a cup final, and you didn't call it right. Mm-hmm. So there has to be some mechanism for Willie Collum to say, well, do you know what, you'll sit this weekend out. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If players are making mistakes that are critical to the outcome of matches, then should they play every week?
That's a fair point.
Or should they be taken out of the team? So I think that's Willie Collum. I've been really impressed with since he's taken over as head of referees. There has been much better communication. It's much more transparent. His messaging is better. He's speaking to clubs. He's getting round the table with people and including them in the discussion. That's
what fans, they just want transparency, don't they?
I'm going to then say, but the thing that flies in the face a little bit of that is that there's been no official channel of communication since the cup final. We're a few days on from that now, but these things are happening, and we are quietly finding out about them. Yeah, which is interesting.
Yeah, John, watching live on YouTube, makes the point: it's the magnitude of the impact of the decision that makes sense for the two VAR guys to have the weekend off. I would definitely take that on board. That's kind of what you're saying. It was such a pivotal...
Well, it's the old saying, isn't it? You've got one job. They literally have one job, and it's just to look at VAR and make these decisions. They should have spotted that. It was their job.
Rangers Easy OK on YouTube says, it's happened numerous times this season when a ref has made a shocker of a decision. They get downgraded to the Championship. Championship clubs have to deal with Dumb and Dumber this weekend. So that's a wee bit harsh, I think.
But they won't be doing it because they don't have VAR in the Championship, so they can just sit and watch Sportscene instead.
Just naturally it felt a wee bit unfair to me, but when you put it that way,
No, these are really important decisions being made in the kind of showpiece matches. Mm-hmm. The reason that they're given the job in the first place is because they're trusted to carry out their duties and get the big calls right. and they've got a really big call wrong there. So there has to be some way of saying, guys, that's not good enough. You need to sharpen up your act.
Aye. If only they did Des Roach.
Well, Michael Gannon called him out there last night, didn't he?
Aye.
As Michael said, Des says there was an onus, an obligation on behalf of Clydesdale House to tell John Beaton to come to the pitchside monitor and take a look for himself. But Michael Gannon was actually quite right, and I hate to admit that. He was quite right last night. That's not a subjective issue. It's not one that John Beaton needs to see again. They actually just need to tell him in his ear, you've given the foul, it's inside the box, it's a penalty kick.
It was. See, I'll move on for this in a second, but you mentioned it there. When I watched it live as well, I don't know why I was so certain it was outside the box. Like, because I was, and there was no big, there was no big furore, there was no one appealing.
So I'd be sacked by VAR as well, because I wouldn't have given it a second look.
That's what I mean. But I'm saying I'm trying to create excuses for them, but I suppose.
But it's so close to the line that is why VAR is there.
Aye.
You know, whether or not you'd thought it or my instincts thought, and I didn't. I've said that before. I didn't think it was a penalty kick. I thought it was an infringement outside the box, and he's landed outside the box, and I thought that was the end of the matter. Mm-hmm. However, if I'm in charge of VAR and that's my job for the afternoon, I think I better give that a quick look over. Mm-hmm. And if you did do that, I'd see his foot was actually planted on the 18-yard line.
Aye.
So that's a bad one, and it's not great for the reputation of VAR. And we've had all these discussions and rows before, and we desperately hope that they get more right than wrong. But reputationally, this one's a sore one, and that's why Willie Collum has done the right thing, in my opinion.
Let me throw this one at you then. Eddie Eason says, Patrick Stewart's barely through the revolving door at Ibrox. He's at war with the Blazers already, as usual, following the party line of the hard done by. Yeah,
he needs to not go down that road. I think that's quite right from Eddie. I've said it before, say it again. What they don't want is to go on a permanent war footing with the authorities, because it's not healthy. It
doesn't benefit anyone.
It's not healthy. And Rangers have been picking fights with authorities over all manner of silly things. And it almost become like the boy that cries wolf.
Do you not feel that there's...
But on this occasion, I think they're right to ask the question.
Aye.
So as long as this isn't just, this is how we mean to go on, and we'll be on to Hampden every week about this or that or the next. You know, there's total vindication for asking that question. But I'd like to think that this isn't going to be a habitual sort of behaviour, and they're going to be questioning everybody and stoking the sort of paranoia, because I keep coming back to it. It's just not healthy. Now, we said about Patrick Stewart. Patrick Stewart's in the job now at Ibrox, and he's spoken to Rangers TV, and he confirmed, and that was our breaking news last night at the top of the show, is that Rangers have written to the SFA. Patrick Stewart's first comments here, the manner in which we lost was hard to take, and as I think people will know, I have spoken with people that watch Hotline Live will know, I have spoken with the SFA to ask for an explanation about the non-awarding of a penalty in extra time, so I will wait to hear what the SFA have to say about that. So that you can only take it from that the question has been asked. In the meantime, Willie Collum has done what he's done, and subsequently there might have to be a conversation, probably an apology of some sort. But I would hate it to get back to bayonets drawn on a daily basis between the sixth floor at Hampden and Ibrox. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's good for Rangers. It's certainly not good for the authorities, and just for Scottish football, just for the whole mood music around it. We don't need it. Mm-hmm. We need to be more progressive in our relationships with everybody, and that's all the clubs and the authorities. And Rangers were moving in that direction under John Bennett, and I like to think, Patrick Stewart's he's a proper guy with proper background, and you would think that he would see the strategic sense in not going down that road. Mm-hmm. Because we talk about, it's the old saying about doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. Well, Rangers have been doing that same thing now for long and weary, and it is wearying, and so 100%, I think he's right to do this. I hope it's not, this is how he means to go on. Yeah.
And to be fair, it was Eddie there who was talking about him picking a fight with the Blazers. To be fair, we thought his first job was going to be
sacking Philip Clement.
Got a quiet chat with Philip Clement, so it's probably a little less dramatic than he planned.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting as well. I've written a column today, and Philip Clement is saying all the right things because he has to about the size of the gap, and he's claiming it's minimal, and that the cup final proved that. And in a way it did. If you took the game in isolation, you can justifiably argue, look, there's not much, there's a penalty kick. But I think anybody who listens too closely to that and who wants to believe it to be true would be in danger of deluding themselves, because the gap is massive. And, I think I mentioned in my column, obviously Celtic have moved on to overtaking Rangers now with 119 major trophies against 118. And, you could look at that again, so just like penalty shootout, there's only one in it, there's nothing much in that. When you actually rewind it to the turn of the century, which is nearly 25 years ago now, Celtic have amassed 51 of those trophies in that period.
It's mad.
Against Rangers 18.
Wow.
Celtic have 18 Premier League
Hang on,
titles.
51 against 18?
Yes.
Wow.
Celtic have got 18 Premier League titles, Premiership titles in that period.
In 24 years?
Yeah.
Bloody hell.
So that is, if you want to assess what the gap looks like, that's where you start.
I didn't realise it was that emphatic.
And to that end, it does show you that Philip Clement's in a really hard place. Again, at the weekend there, legs are falling off people. People are falling over in the middle of the pitch. Brendan Rodgers is able to turn to his bench and bring on 2 record signings, £20 million worth.
Yeah.
On you go. Clement turns around, his Dessers and Dowell.
Aye.
And that shows you, so that Rangers have definitely been moving in the right direction over the last 3-4 weeks. And I didn't think that was going to happen, so I give Clement great credit there. But when you actually look at the scale of the job, and and it's structurally from the top down that Rangers need a reboot, and that's why the most important signing of the lot might be Patrick Stewart, because he has to walk into that boardroom and he has to start leading, and he has to start telling the investors who made up the board previously that what you were doing wasn't the way to run a football club. This is the way to run a football club. You've employed me to make these decisions. Now, please sit down, shut up, and let me get on with the job. Because Rangers need to change. They need a change. They need fresh ideas. They need new strategy. They need new energy. They probably need new money. But I think there's a resistance to change. I think some of the guys that are in the boardroom kind of quite like it. They went there well-meaning because they want, and they certainly did a great job in terms of taking Rangers out of harm's way. But the longer that it stagnates, the longer that these guys put their egos, with their brown brogues, then the worse the decision making and the staler Rangers have become because of it.
Yeah.
So they need freshness, and they need to be prepared to say, do you know what, we like that little bit of power and all that, but we totally understand now we've not been running this right. The trophy count tells you that. We actually need to take a step back and let somebody drive this from the front. And that's what's going to be fascinating. Is Patrick Stewart that guy? Does he feel that he's been given the mandate to go in and start telling them, as opposed to them telling him, and him just being a facilitator? He needs to be the driver.
Yeah.
And it needs to be a kind of radical modernisation. All these things need to happen. And whether it's Philip Clement who's in the dugout or anybody else, until they get that part of the club structure right, then it's just send on the next one. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
The job is almost impossible to properly cut that gap.
Going back to the trophy count thing you mentioned, I just can't get that out of my head. See, when you think back to the year 2000, Rangers under Dick Advocaat, they'd beaten Celtic, I think it was 21 points that season. People were talking about Celtic are 5 years behind, and Rangers still had big ambitions in Europe.
Which does show that things can turn quickly.
Aye, of course, but imagine you said to a Rangers fan then, see the next 25 years, Celtic are going to almost completely dominate. You wouldn't have believed it, really.
No, well, yeah.
And to put another slant on it as well, this is why I feel uncomfortable seeing Peter Lawwell and people like that at Celtic get a hard time. I mean, what more could they have? I know, but
there you're talking about. I mean, I'm talking about the difference in leadership structures at the two clubs. Peter Lawwell is a Premier League chief exec, or was a Premier League style chief exec, and he was up against. I mean, it wasn't a fair fight. And he's been up against
Yeah.
a various collection of kiddie on merchants across the city. It has. It's been easy.
Just a
I mean, he
fact.
must be laughing up his sleeve. Rangers continue to make these silly decisions, and he's just gone further and further into the distance. That's effectively what's happened. Which is why what I'm saying, Patrick Stewart. You know, and I know football fans just want to see what's happening on the pitch, but Patrick Stewart is going to be really interesting to see. He comes with a very good CV. He comes with a very good reputation, and with a lot of people who consider him to be a proper big hitter. So what impact can he make? Because the club, from Philip Clement up to the board, is in desperate need of help, and it has to come from there. It has to come from clear strategic leadership from the top level. So, you know, it's hard to gauge that, isn't it?
Yeah.
But we will see over the course of the next wee while what Patrick Stewart's vision for being the chief executive of Rangers looks like, and that could be really, really interesting.
And of course, he's talking now. We're on the eve of the January transfer window. There's been news today. We've had the story on Record Sport Online that Cyril Dessers has a potential Ibrox exit route. I think there's a club or two in France's Ligue 1 that are, you know, following him. And I mean that, without being harsh to him, I think he just needs a new setting. He needs to get out of Ibrox.
I think it'd be best for all concerned.
Aye.
And I think if somebody comes with a bundle of cash for Cyril Dessers over the festive period, will feel like a visit from Santa Claus.
Aye.
I think Dessers is now finally, Philip Clement appears to have, you know, the pennies dropped with him. People were saying it for months and months, and that's another reason, by the way, that people start doubting, like myself. You look at Clement, you think, what is he seeing that nobody else is seeing? Why is he sticking so rigidly? Why did they not put Danilo in his European squad? All these things that you couldn't possibly fathom. And eventually, he seems to have reached the same conclusion as everybody else, that Cyril Dessers is just struggling with the weight of the number 9 shirt.
That's why last night, and I got a little bit of stick in the comments for this after the show, but like, I still wouldn't back Clement if I was a Rangers fan, just purely because that.
His judgment has been flawed on so many big issues.
All over the place. Yeah. Like even Raskin sitting on the bench 100%. For months.
Igaman. Couldn't get a kick for about 6 months.
Aye, and now, okay, as you say, he's sort of more by accident than design stumbled onto this, but it shouldn't fill me with confidence that he's going to stick to it, that it's going to be long term.
Remember I said previously about drowning man syndrome?
Aye.
You try something, if it works once, you don't let go. You grip on for dear life. And I think that's what we're witnessing here. Now, there have been various things, whether it was playing Sterling as a right winger or, you know, where he's repeated it and repeated because it worked one time. But this actually looks real. Now, as I say, I keep saying, was this all part of the sort of master plan, or has he absolutely stumbled upon it? I'm more inclined to think that it's more on the stumbling side. But it's working, and he'll cling to it. And he should do, because, you know, guys like myself, back in the summer, were saying, can't believe they're not finding a way to get Hadji into that squad after he's the last man standing from Scottish game at the Euros.
Yeah.
His value was just dropping off. I mean, when you leave the Euros and you've got to that kind of late stage in the tournament, representing your country, you're one of the attacking flair players. There's a premium that comes on your head at that point, and it should be round about at the very least £5 million mark.
And going back to this,
if they sold Hadji tomorrow, I don't think they get anywhere near that. So.
And going back to the Patrick Stewart thing, I mean, in the summer, 800k for the players that went out.
Yeah.
For Todd Cantwell, Connor Goldson.
That's how bad it is.
Aye.
And that's why he's got such an important job now. Because if he can really lead them, and if he's not a minister without portfolio, you know, who's just there to tick a box, but ultimately just carry out the orders that he's getting from the guys that are paying the way impact, it's not going to make any difference.
It could be me or you, it could be anyone.
Yeah, well they had that. They had it in Stuart Robertson, and, you know, just guys that are, you know, getting their lunch money taken off them.
Yeah. You
know, and then told what colour underpants to put on them on. This guy, Patrick Stewart, has to be different. This guy has to be a leader of men. He has to walk into that room. And I hope that the conversation before he took the job was, right, guys, I'll do this, but I need you to get behind me and allow me to lead from the front and allow me to make the big calls, because otherwise, what's the point?
Stuart, watching live on YouTube, chimes in. What kind of leadership have Man United had since Fergie? He's obviously alluded to the fact that Patrick Stewart was previously at Man United.
Yeah.
It's a fair point. Man United have been a bit of a shambles.
He's had various roles at Man United over the course of 18 years. I think it was only laterally that he moved into the full-time chief executive position.
And you could take another view that that's readied him for Rangers. He knows.
That's certainly a man of full experience who will have loads of contacts at the top level, not just in English football, but at the European level.
You'd think so.
And that's where Peter Lawwell has always had one up in Rangers over the last period of time.
Mm-hmm.
So he carries a bit of clout into the job, and let's see now how that manifests now that he's actually sitting in the seat.
Aye, time will tell. Do we think? I mean, I guess I'm throwing this at you.
Do you want to hear what else he said?
Aye, go for it. Aye.
You make up your mind what you're doing.
Well, in fact, I've been called out a little bit here on the comments. Well, I'll go with that. Hold on. It's Dennis Mirren. It's a long one.
Oh, Dennis likes a long one.
I know. Does Daniel realise Rangers had to start from the bottom, giving Celtic technically a 7-3 run for all trophies, and also shut their top tier down for 2 seasons while Rangers filling out Ibrox against Montrose and Brecon? 7 free years at Champions League money. We stopped 10 in a row by 25 points. Now we have officials clearly doing everything in their power to stop Rangers beating Celtic. 5 goals disallowed this last season in all firm games, and then Sunday the final straw.
I'm bored. Right? Okay, right. Do you want to hear what Patrick Stewart had to say rather than who was it? Dennis Mirren.
Dennis, aye.
Okay, Dennis the Menace. Patrick Stewart, Rangers' new chief executive, says there has been a lot for us to be cautiously optimistic about in recent weeks. I know the signings we made in the summer are starting to really bed in and play with a degree of confidence, and some of the ones that were already there that just couldn't get into the first team. In fairness to Philip, he always said that would take time. You always say, well, when will that time come? But we've seen it in the last few weeks. The match with Spurs really showed Rangers going head-to-head with a top Premier League side, and it was a match we all felt we should have won. The performances in the SPFL have been really positive. We are scoring, not conceding. Of course, the cup final, I don't want to dwell on it again, but it could have been such a memorable day. We have a lot to be positive about. So he's certainly painting a picture of, glass half full.
Yeah.
I think for most of this season, it's been a case of, stadium completely empty at the start, and then glass half empty following that.
You've got to spade a spade. It's been a shambles this season, Rangers.
It certainly has.
It's been absolutely chaotic. And just going back to Dennis, right? He said this thing about.
Don't let him get under your skin.
No, but he says the point about Celtic, Rangers Celtic a 7-year start. Whose fault's that?
Yeah,
wasn't it Celtic's fault?
No.
But anyway, sorry.
Again, he's right under your skin. Well done, so yeah. Do you know what? As you said, if you actually look at the season so far, it has been shambolic. That is the word for the Rangers season. Now, the last 3 or 4 weeks, that's not enough of a body of evidence to say that everything's turning round.
Yeah.
It's certainly moving in the right direction in terms of how it's starting to look on the pitch. I think Patrick Stewart has to ask himself a question. The same thing that we're discussing here. Has this manager actually worked this one out, or has he just fluked it?
Aye.
Because
I think it's a very valid question.
Because I'm going to have to tie my mask to this guy. Mm-hmm. If I think he's the real deal, then I'm going to back him. I'm going to go into January. I'm going to try and give him whatever funds. I need to believe in him. Mm-hmm. So we're having this conversation. Rangers fans out there are having similar conversations. Nobody's quite sure. Is this a sign that Clement was right all along, right from the start, and he was always the right guy, and his decisions haven't been flawed? That's a hard sell. Or is it drowning man syndrome, and he's stumbled into this and kind of,
ding,
yeah, just found for me a light bulb moment. Does he even realise it's a light bulb? I don't know.
Aye.
But if I'm the chief executive, I need to work that out, and I need to work it out quick.
Aye.
Am I believing in this guy? Is this guy the real deal? Mm-hmm. Or when I look at the back catalogue here, have I got more reason to be concerned? And if I feel I've got more reason to be concerned, do I want him to front up the next phase of the longest renovation since the Copeland Road stand.
And I was thinking after last night's show, the Scottish Cup now is absolutely imperative to Rangers. It's the only competition they can win, aside for the Europa League, obviously, but that has become crucial.
Yeah, well, again, do you know what? I'm going to go back and give you another stat from the trophy kind of count. Brendan Rodgers obviously went away for a while. But do you know what? If he's on his way to the league title, he's got a League Cup this season. If he wins the Scottish Cup, that's him putting another 2 back into the cabinet to go with the League Cup. That would take his total, if I get this right, to 12 trophies in over 2 stints.
Wow.
Right?
And he was only there 2.5 years the first time?
Rangers have got 3 over both of those stints.
Wow.
So Brendan Rodgers came, conquered, got all the silver, packed his bags, went down to Leicester for a wee while.
Won the FA Cup. And then come back up.
Come back up the road. And then all the time, and so this is the second season now, finished this with 12 trophies to his name. And over all that period, even when he was down south, Rangers would be stuck on 3. And that's the difference.
Yeah. Mark Fairfield, who loves a comment. Mark.
Hi, Mark.
Good to hear from you. He'd love to know where Rangers are getting the money for another rebuild. I mean, that is a fair point at the back of my mind as well.
We're going to sell Dessers.
Why?
Millions to be made.
For all his encouraging words, and I'm sure meaning well, if you've not got much money in January,
No, and it's not another rebuild. Philip Clement would argue it's the next phase of the same rebuild.
Right. Okay.
So, you know,
we're still in the same rebuild.
But there was a lot of, in fairness, what you would say is the wage bill was reduced quite substantially over the summer, and that was sort of the first milestone that they had to reach, and they've done that. As Scott McDermott said, it looked more like a downgrade than a rebuild, and it has looked up until the last few weeks that that's certainly the case. You know, how much is available? You know, I wouldn't expect to see Rangers spending fortunes in January. But what I would say is that I've described it as a mini wobble from Celtic because I don't think their form's at the same level as it was start of November. And if this mini wobble was to be extended into the coming weeks over the festive period, which is a busy schedule, and some of Celtic's players, as Mick was saying, the mix zone after the game on Sunday was like a casualty ward. So if there is an impact, if the energy levels are affected, and they seem to be, that they might be, well, do you know what? Brendan Rodgers just goes in January and says, right, I'll take him, and him, thank you.
Aye.
And that brings them fresh choices, fresh legs, fresh minds, and they'll be of a quality which Rangers would be unlikely to be able to afford.
To match. See as well, sorry, just going on to this rebuild thing, but going back to the year 2020, right? Bear with me. Mm-hmm. That was the year that Rangers won the title, or 2021, sorry, 2021. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Rangers won the title by a street, 25 points, as someone said. Ange Postecoglou comes in, and at that point, people were saying Celtic are several years behind. And I would put that forward as perhaps the most significant, important summer in Celtic's recent history, because Ange came in and he signed players like Abada, O'Reilly, Kyogo, Hatate for basically pennies.
Yeah.
And they're all worth 15, 20 million.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the thing that Rangers, it's extremely difficult to do that.
Well, it's even more difficult when you're Rangers.
Aye.
Because Celtic were a well-run business.
Aye.
With money in the bank.
Aye.
So it's a whole lot easier to go and conduct that sort of overhaul when, you know, as you're saying, he's hasn't spent absolute fortunes. He's spent the money really wisely. Postecoglou,
extremely wisely.
But at the same time, do you know what? The money was there.
Aye, it was there. Aye.
They could do this. They could finance it, and Rangers have done as much. And by the way, I'm critical of the Rangers board. They've actually dug into their pockets on so many occasions now to try and help. They're cobbling money out the back of the couch. They're throwing everything at it. But it's not. This is what I'm talking about when I say clear thinking, strategic management from the front, where you don't have to try and say, oh, look, can you pony up? Gives a couple of mil, I could get a striker.
A loan or whatever.
Just run your business properly. Mm-hmm. And that's what Patrick Stewart that's what he's charged with doing now.
And they're a big enough club. There should be no reason that Rangers,
Well, they've got a huge support, big season ticket sales, fans paying through the teeth for new kit, and so there's no doubt the Rangers fans, and as much as the guys in the boardroom are Rangers fans, no doubt about it, they're just wealthier than most others. But all the Rangers fans, in their own way, have been contributing and paying in a lot of money to try and get the thing going. It's just not been properly steered from the front, from the top, and that's why they've been crying out for a proper boardroom executive.
Time will tell.
Let's see.
Watch this space. Is there anything else that we should get off our chest here while we've got a captive audience at home?
I don't know. You get confessions to make about your private life again.
No comment. Right, my mum's still distressed about that. No, I think that brings us to the end of Tuesday's Hotline Live with Record Sport. Thank you so much.
Well, from the age of 5, I remember I wanted to.
Thank you so much for all the comments. I mean, again, so many comments. We really appreciate it. And thanks very much for watching at home. We'll be back to do it all again tomorrow at 6 p.m.
We will.
And we hope you can join us then. Thanks very much.